Hi guys, Chris here. So I've got my Xiaomi Mi Max. I've had it for 1 year. I've been using it as my daily phone and I really do like it. I've reviewed a lot of mobile phones. If you're familiar with my channel, you would see that I've checked out all sorts of flagship mobiles, but I keep returning to this one because of its stellar battery life. Very good battery life and a large immersive screen that's easy to type on. It's great for looking at movies, video content, YouTube, things like that. However, it's not perfect. It does have a rather weak build to it, the design, and the rear camera really isn't that good at all. Often it's got autofocus problems. It's hopeless at low light or indoor shots. And then the front-facing camera as well is a little bit average there. So that's where the Mi Max 2 comes in, its successor, where Xiaomi have focused on those problem areas. They've improved the design. It's now unibody with antenna lines. It has a new rear-facing camera, which is the Sony IMX386, the same camera sensor used in the Mi 6, but in the Mi 6 it has optical image stabilization. This one doesn't, unfortunately. It's got a Type-C port on there, front-facing loudspeaker, and they've done a bad thing, which is downgrade the CPU. It's the Snapdragon 625, which is a very efficient CPU. And that, coupled with the new battery size, which is 5,300 mAh, should offer phenomenal battery life. So for me, it's not going to bother me too much, but I was really hoping for the Snapdragon 630 or the Snapdragon 660. So it's sad to see they have not decided to use the newest Qualcomm chips. So let's get this one unboxed here. So the seller I used is Hong Kong Goldway. These guys sell on AliExpress. Very good service. I've used them quite a few times. They're quite quick at getting the new Xiaomi releases. And I did ask for it to be factory sealed still, so they haven't tampered with this at all. It has not been opened, which is great. So you can see there are just a couple of those specs. 2.5D glass, battery capacity, and on the front, this is the 4GB, 64GB eMMC version. There is another version that supports 128GB of storage, and both of them support micro SD cards, so you can expand upon that. Okay, we've got an instruction leaflet that's come out here that looks to be all in Chinese, and there's some tools inside there. The phone aside for a second, got a USB to Type-C cable, and then our charger, which is a quick charger because it is rated to 12 volts, 1.5 amps max there. Oh wow, that feels so much better in hand because it's got those rounded corners on there and that unibody housing. So there's a pre-applied screen protector. This is just for transit. This one you need to pull off. And then just a sticker on the back. And there's also one covering the camera. Now looking at the rear of the Mi Max 2 compared to the Mi Max, you can see that the location of the fingerprint reader is in the exact same location. The camera as well, but they've moved the LED flash, which is dual tone, to the left of the camera module. Now that camera module doesn't have optical image stabilization, but it is upgraded. It's the Sony IMX386. The pixel size is 1.25 microns, so they're larger pixels than a 16 megapixel camera that's on the Mi Max, and the aperture is f2.2. Just to point out that the Max, the version 1, has plastic top and bottom, and this now has antenna lines and a unibody housing, which feels so much better, a lot higher quality with an overall better, more rigid frame to it. Now the front of the devices looks almost identical. We've got a white face. There is no black version, unfortunately, but the bezels are meant to be a little bit smaller around the IPS panel. I'll find out when I power that on soon. So we've got capacitive menu keys at the bottom, at the front, an f2.05 megapixel camera. I'm unsure whether they've upgraded that module. Hopefully they have, and it's an improvement over the Mi Max, but I can see the earpiece is slightly smaller. So on the bottom we have the loudspeaker, Type-C port, and microphone. They've made it symmetrical, the design just looks a little bit nicer, just like the Mi Max. Now, good to see they've put some torque screws in there. What this means is that hopefully when you drop it, it won't split apart, which is what happens with this. I've dropped this before and the whole rear and the front split apart, but those screws should stop that from happening. On the left side, you'll find this SIM tray, so it will take 2 SIMs or 1 SIM and a micro SD card. You can see there the antenna line, whereas the Mi Max just has that plastic on the top, which is a slightly different tone to the rest of the body. And on the top, you'll find the 3.5mm headphone jack, secondary microphone, this is for noise cancellation and in video, and the IR transmitter. And lastly, on the right, the power and volume buttons. Now, these are made out of metal. They have a good feel to them. They don't rattle around either, which is great. Just to point out too that the camera module sits completely flush, unlike the Mi Max. So overall, the build quality is great. This is a huge step up over the original version. So our thickness comes in at 7.59mm, which is really good. So it's nice and thin, even though this is, of course, a very large mobile. So the phone weighs in at 212 grams, which is 12 grams heavier than its predecessor. Okay, so time to power it on for the first time and just run through the setup. Okay, so MIUI 8, and because this is the Chinese version that I got, we've got Asian languages, Tibetan, and English. Global ROM will probably be released down the track, I'd say in 1 or 2 months or so. So I'm going to skip adding a mobile network now, just quickly go through this to get it set up. And now I need to proceed to add a finger here, and you just need to tap your finger on the sensor on the rear there 10 times. So I've done that. So setup is complete. I've just locked it, as you can see. Now I'm going to place my finger on there. Unlocks pretty much instantly there. Okay, that time it didn't work. That was my own fault. There we go. So I'm going to place it on there now. It's not quite instant. There's a little bit of a delay there, but it seems to be reasonably accurate. I did set that up super fast, of course. So you can see that that super ugly bezel that's around the screen, that black bezel is what I'm talking about, has been lessened slightly compared to the first model. They've pretty much halved it there, which is good. So it doesn't look as bad. So I can see there's a few bloatware applications on there. Well, actually quite a few if you look under more apps, but literally all of these can be uninstalled, which is great. Now, if you want a ROM that is completely free of Chinese, then you're going to have to wait for that global ROM that I mentioned earlier, because in the dialer, you're still going to see some Chinese characters and things pop up now and then. There's the yellow pages and other things that really aren't valid to us. You see, that's all Chinese related. So, of course, no one really wants that outside of China. So that's why you get the global ROM. So have a look now and see what version it's running. I will check, of course, later on for an over-the-air update. So here we can see that it's running MIUI 8.5.6, and it says it's the stable version, and that is based off Android 7.1.1, which is good. That's a very new Android ROM there. And our free available space on first boot is approximately 53 gigabytes there. So you've got a bit of space there to play with. Straight away, it prompted me for a firmware update, which it's automatically downloading. So this one, as soon as I connected up to the wireless, prompted me to download it. It's a massive update. It's a whole full ROM, as you can see, 1.4 gigabytes. So I ran the latest version of Antutu on both of the devices, and you can see this is the major con of the Max 2. The fact that it's about 15,000 points less in Antutu, and that main difference coming from the GPU performance you can see there. Well, mainly the GPU, and then the RAM performance is a little bit less. So if you're a gamer and you want the best performance and also a cheaper device, then you'd probably want to go for the first model. The ROM doesn't come with Google Play pre-installed because it's the Chinese ROM, but it's not too hard to install it. I've already done that now. You can see Google Play here. And as far as I can tell, there are no problems running it. And the performance of the ROM has been good so far. I haven't seen any major stutters or lag, which I'm surprised at, because previous Snapdragon 625 devices, I have noticed now and then you see a little more stutters than, say, other chipsets like the 650. Now, to install it, there's a link in the description. If you want Google Play and you are going to get the Chinese version, it's just a matter of moving over some files and then restoring that via backup. And that will give you Google Play, contact syncs, and a few other things. Just so you get an idea of just how large the Mi Max 2 is compared to other devices. So this is the Samsung Galaxy 6 Edge Plus at 5.7 inches, and it's dwarfing it quite clearly. That fits inside there. And the Samsung Galaxy S7, which is my current second phone that I use when I go out, when I want some decent photos, because I really do like the camera on this mobile. But you can see the difference there is massive. So you see, you need to factor that in if you can fit this in your pocket or whatever. Now, don't knock the larger phone until you try it. Trust me on this, because when I first got this, I thought, wow, this is just too huge. It's massive. There's no way I'm going to hang on to this phone and keep it. And here I am a year later still using it. When I go back to my Samsung Galaxy S7, I find it feels like a toy. It feels very small, and often typing on the keyboard, I have more typos as a result. I've just gotten so used to the keyboard here on the larger version with the larger screen. It just makes typing a real breeze here. Now, I put Google's keyboard on here, the Gboard, because I absolutely hate the stock Xiaomi one that you get. This one I find to be a lot better. So I'm just going to quickly load it in a page. See, I'm not a speed typist or anything, and I haven't loaded this before. The performance of the Snapdragon 625 so far seems decent. It's good. I find that it's a CPU for everyone. Of course, it's more based on efficiency, so it sips away at the battery. It doesn't take a huge hit like it does with other chipsets, or like the 28 nanometer process MediaTek ones that can have some really horrific standby battery consumption. Time to test out the new speaker setup. So we've got a front-facing speaker as well as the bottom speaker. The Max, the first version, has only just the bottom speaker on there. So both of these phones have the volume already set to 100%. I'm going to test the old model first. So it clearly sounds better to me on the Mi Max 2 because it's got a little bit more depth to it, some more mids, a little bit more bass. Overall, a better loudspeaker setup. If you've seen my Mi 6 unboxing video and review, I encountered a lot of bugs and instability with the Android 7 ROM with MIUI 8, and so far so good. Now, I've only had this for a couple of hours now, but I've installed a few things that didn't work straight away. Like, for example, Google Play would crash on the Mi 6 on the first Chinese stable ROM, and it is working here, and so far so good. Other applications that I could get a crash on, I can't on the Mi Max 2 ROM. And for those interested in the camera sensor information, so the Sony IMX386, and then the front-facing sensor is a Samsung one. So you can get into the camera just by double tapping the volume down button, and that will launch the camera, even if the phone is locked. Now, it won't give you access to the gallery until you put your PIN code in, or your fingerprint is read, of course, for security. So you can see here that it's the typical standard MIUI camera app. Shutter rate in these conditions seems perfectly fine. So let's have a look and see the modes we get. All the typical modes. Manual offers settings there to tweak the white balance, focus, exposure, and our ISO. And there are no more settings there. And under video, here we have slow-mo and time-lapse. Now, slow motion on these phones, or all of the Mi phones that I've tested, is horrible. I would never use it. They also don't seem to support 1080p 60 frames per second ever for some reason. I've never seen it on their mobiles. So by default, it's just HD. Video quality, you always have to go and change it to 4K if you want to shoot in 4K. For some reason, it never saves these settings. I think it's intentional, but it's annoying. So focus mode, we have continual autofocus or tap. So hopefully the focus is going to be good, and I won't need to put it onto tap if it's going to do its job properly, which it doesn't do on the Mi Max. So I'm going to head out now, get some samples, just a quick mini review of the camera, but also a very quick comparison to the Mi Max 2 versus the Mi Max. Okay, so this is indoors now, and this is one area where the front-facing camera on the Mi Max is quite poor. Now I've got absolutely no control with settings using the front-facing camera, and looking at both of them, I can see that, whoa, especially now, that the exposure there is a lot better on the Mi Max 2, so they have tweaked and optimized that camera But I don't know whether it's the same sensor or not. I will have to look into that and check that out. But it does look to me that we're getting a slight improvement, but still not wonderful on the Mi Max 2, really. And now those front-facing cameras again, side by side. Outside you can see that it looked to me to be about the same when I step in the sun there. Back in the shadows, see how the auto exposure is handling that. Now a side-by-side video comparison. Now the Mi Max always seems to have problems with the focus. It's best to probably just override it with tap to focus. Which I'm going to do now. I'm just going to tap on the building on both of them. Oh, and I can't do it actually, sorry, on the Max 2 because it has continual autofocus enabled. And I'll just walk over here and get a close-up. See how it handles now focusing on this table. I can see that the focus of the Max 2 is pulsing in and out at times. Okay, so that is all I'm going to cover here in this unboxing and first look of the Xiaomi Mi Max 2. So it is a refined version really of the Mi Max, which I think was a successful mobile, and really this one is a downgrade in terms of performance, as you've seen with that Antutu score. It's a lot lower because they've gone for the Snapdragon 625 processor, but they'll probably have their reasons behind that because they have plans. But still, I am disappointed they didn't put the 660 or at least the 630 in here. Still, it's an efficient chipset that with a 5300 milliamp hour battery should mean phenomenal battery life out of this device, even though it does have a larger screen on it. So build quality, it feels so much better compared to the previous generation. The loudspeaker has improved, the camera has improved, and overall I do like the look of this and where it is heading. The ROM so far does seem to be stable. I have not encountered any problems yet, whereas out of the box with the Mi Pad 3 or the Mi 6, straight away I had some crashing, some bugs and problems. At least this hasn't happened yet, but I will keep you updated on that via my Twitter and of course in the full final review when I will use this for a couple of weeks, go over things like battery life, more benchmarks and just use in general, how the audio quality is, 4G performance, everything like that. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now. And if you do have any questions, let me know down in the comments and I will try to get around to answering you.